there's some color issue, and it will probably lose contact. This is probably a loose contact. It's coming out as funky colors. Yeah, great. Okay, so welcome to the first lecture of the final session of today. And this is going to be given by Nandini. No introductions necessary, I suppose, because you've already had a tutorial by her. So this is, part of the research she's doing as part of the Epigraphy lab, where she's actually backtracking how exactly Brahmi was deciphered. So, usually in our textbooks, we all read this one-line thing that James Prinsep deciphered Brahmi. But deep reading of its history shows that the story is much more complicated than that. And this is a project that Nandini has been working for the past 2 years. So it's a wonderful case study of how exactly decipherment occurs as a network enterprise or as a group enterprise than rather the genius of one single person. So Nandini.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I think I'm audible. No? It is fine. Is it fine now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So yesterday's tutorial was more about how Brahmi got deciphered. I mean, how they were at least trying to decipher the Brahmi. So I think I tried to give you a glance how usually inscriptions are deciphered, like from tracing from present to past. And as I mentioned during the tutorial that it took Prinsep just 3 days to decipher, but I remember how you people reacted to the plates and how interesting or difficult or confusing it was for you. So, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So again, just a brief introduction why I'm speaking about Brahmi today. So as Sir mentioned that I've been working on this for last 2 years, and ICL has this objective of working on Indus script. And Brahmi is the earliest inscription of South Asia. And when it comes to the early Indian writing, early Indian script, that's the Ashokan Brahmi. So in order to do a comparative study, in order to find any link or trace between the earliest two, we started working with Brahmi. To be honest, initially it was not the plan like how Brahmi got deciphered or Brahmi's network, I mean establishing the network was the plan. But how this earliest script got deciphered, it gradually became a part of our study. And when we took a deep dive into it, we found that it was not the only person, James Prinsep, there were more other people who were involved in it. So just a quick recap from yesterday's thing. Prinsep and his arrival in 1819, and after he came here, what happens? He was, of course, he was appointed as the SM master. He was here, he was in Calcutta for a while, and after that he was transferred to Benares. So what is happening there? He was, what to say, there was no quote unquote any institutional training for archaeology or numismatics or that kind of thing for these people. So it was their interest that led to explore or study, observe multiple things. So when he was in the Benares, apart from writing on coins, I mean he didn't start writing on coins when he was in Benares. He was more into the maps, scenes and scenarios of the Benares and the Ghats. He published a book later. I'll be speaking on that later. So this interest about India, India's past, that this was not new with Princip. So while these colonial administrators were coming, so the important part for them to look at the back, like what was happening there, like what happened there, what was their history. So in order to dig into their history of India, what they considered as the source was mostly the treaties, the Dharma Shastra, Sutras, and they apparently found them as the law book, or maybe that's what Indians were following in it. So in order to look at the past, gradually the interest shifted on the Sanskrit language, the Vedic culture, Vedic past, and from 1770 onwards, we started observing the publication of various translations by these scholars. So before I talk about Princip, so a small context may require here, because what was the context, why Princip all of a sudden started talking about coins, inscriptions and etc. So this is William Jones, and his arrival in Calcutta was 1783. And he arrives in Calcutta in 1783 and he establishes the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. Isn't it very surprising or funny, like he arrives in 83 and established such a prestigious institution in 84. So when I started exploring a bit on him, it actually gave me an idea that when he was a student in Oxford, he already developed an interest in the Oriental language and culture. So he was already aware of the India's past, India's quote unquote glorious past, and the materials and the sources, the primary sources what were available. So he took all the effort to learn the earlier languages, and when he arrives in 1783, within a year this thing is happening. And from 1788 onwards, Asiatic Researches, this volume is getting published, and that was totally dedicated to on the India's past, on India's, I mean, they were doing so many kind of field works, whatever they were observing, whatever they were finding, it was all dedicated to this. And I would say it was not restricted only to the inscriptions and the monuments. There were many other topics, like whatever they were finding it interesting. It can be fossil, it can be topography, it can be barometer, everything. So after 1784, this is the second person I already introduced to you yesterday, Wilkins. And Wilkins is again, a small background is required here. He belonged to a family who were already associated with printing and press. So he had keen interest in characters, typesets, etc. And when he is coming here, what he is doing, the translation of Bhagavad Gita. So this was one of his major project, and the Westerners got introduced to the India's past with this. And from 1788, the first volume, here he is publishing the articles on the inscriptions, the 3 inscriptions you saw yesterday, the plates, if you remember. So while I'm talking about 1784, 88, that was strictly about the Bengal and India. But what was happening outside Bengal? So if I look at this person, Sharpali and G.F. Grotefend, they have already discovered cuneiform and hieroglyphics by this time. And C.L. Grotefend, he was the son of G.F. Grotefend, and what he did, he discovered Kharoshti in 1836. So the ground was already set, and we would only see the French and the German scholars who had already made a bigger contribution in the field of decipherment, in the field of discovery. So can we sense some sort of diplomacy, some sort of, what to say, sorry? Rivalry would be a strong word, but yeah, rivalry would be a strong word, but yeah, of course. So it was the turn of probably the Britishers had some sort of idea in their mind, they had to contribute something. So if we look at the situation of 1821, it is the Asiate de Paris, and the names what I've got from there, I mean the sources, so it would look like the British scholars Wilkins, H. Wilson, Colebrook, along with the German scholars and the French scholars, they were actually meeting there. So of course there was a buzz, there was words among these people that this discovery, decipherments, these things were happening. So if I put Princeps 1837 discovery or decipherment of Brahmi, that was something just happened out of the context, or a genius all of a sudden did it in 1837. Won't it be little difficult to accept? What do you say? So maybe this broader context already set the stage for Princip to take a step further for his decipherment. So as I was telling, Princip, when he was in Benares, of course he published this writing on Benares Illustrated, but apart from this, the articles, I mean chronologically I have just mentioned 4 articles. This is one of those 4, what he wrote apart from coins and inscription. And I would say not only this 4, there were many other articles. I've just mentioned 4, and chronologically from 1832 to 1837. This is just a glimpses that his interest was not restricted only in the archaeological part, or not only on the coins or on the inscription. He was also exploring the other parts and other aspects of the continent. So 1837, what happens in 1840, he passed away in 1840 actually, Princip. He returned back Britain in 1840 and he passed away. So the thing Alexander Cunningham wrote in his 4 reports that it took him exactly 3 days, and I remember from the writing, it's Princip is with all his excitement writing to Cunningham like jaldi pahunchna hai, jaldi chalo. So it's written in English, but that's what he meant from there. Like he was already in the verge of deciphering the legend, and as I said, 3 days thing, 3 days myth, but again the broader context, again what was happening beyond India and in the world context. So as I just said, like 3 days genius, and this is the 1834 volume from when Princip started writing on particularly on inscription. So we would find the names like T.S. Burt, A. Troyer, W.H. Meal, and B.H. Hodgson. Hodgson, he had quite a few achievements and contribution in this field. He was working on Nepal. And an interesting part about this, like these people were working pan-India, like they were working in the different corners of the country, and they were sending Princip the specimens. They were sending continuously the examples or whatever they, the data they were collecting from the sites. So this is, I think I showed this picture yesterday as well. This is the eye copy of the Allahabad pillar inscription. This was drawn by T.S. Burt. So when we look at the relevant volumes of Asiatic Society of Bengal, this particular thing from 1780 to 1840 time frame, so we found at least this many people apart from Princip who were directly involved in this whole procedure. And if I look at the characters, as I already mentioned, T.S. Burt, Captain Troyer, This is General Ventura. General Ventura, he was working in the northwestern part, and from where he found the coins of the Scythians, Indo-Parthians, and he would send them to Princip for the further reading. And when this thing was happening, I mean when he was trying to decipher Lat or the other script what he was mentioning, he was also looking for, with the, probably knowingly or unknowingly, he was also reading the Kharoshti coins as well. So both the process were happening in a simultaneous way, and the simultaneous process, it's not that he dedicatedly he was looking only for Brahmi inscription or Brahmi decipherment. So Ventura, and then comes Stevenson. Stevenson, Karli cave, I think some of them are aware of the Karli caves. There are the Buddhist inscription, and those are from 1st century CE. So those are the Ali Brahmi inscription, those are found there. So Stevenson was working there. Hodgson, as I mentioned, he was working mostly on the area of Nepal and that part. And this thing, Mahabalipuram. So this is where we will be going on Saturday, the Tiger Cave. So there, Tiger Cave, what is happening? There is a Grantha script, there is an inscription. So the Mahamailaipur inscription, they marked it, and initially their idea was like it was somehow related to Brahmi inscription, which later found out to be not. So apart from these people, there were one or two characters I would like to mention here. One was the Madhava Rao, and other person was Sharoda Prasad Chakraborty. So the first person, he was the librarian of the Benares College. So what he was doing, he made a chart for Princip. He gave a reading of the inscription for Princip, which Princip actually accepted, and he took his translation and took the reading of it. And when it comes to Sharoda Prasad Chakraborty, he again gave a reading of the plates, and Princip actually relied more on Sharoda Prasad's writing because he was aware of English language. He was formally trained in English, so he thought like his translation would make more sound, I mean more relevant to the context. So from this network, from this diagram, the characters what we got apart from Princip, quite a few. So I'll be highlighting two of them. One is Wilkins and the second is Lassen. Okay. So again, like whoever attended the tutorial yesterday, so you have seen the characters, like what he designed at that time. It was during 1778 he designed the characters, and he was the first to make this typeset. And these were his publication from Asiatic Researches volume 1 and 2. So whenever I'm just going back and saying like Princip did the decipherment, Princip read the Brahmi, of course he read the Brahmi, he read the 3rd century BC Brahmi. But if I look back at this translation, at this works, by this time, 1788, 1789, these things were, I mean the later Brahmi inscriptions were already read by Charles Wilkins, along with the Siddhamatrika script of the Pala period. So this is the inscription of Anantavarman, what we saw yesterday, and this is probably the only work Wilkins left for us, because the problem with Wilkins's work is we hardly have any chart or we hardly have any idea how he did it. In case of Princip, it's not that Princip exactly wrote the formula or Princip exactly told us this was the particular way or this is how he managed to read all the inscription. But for Wilkins, it is still a mystery. So, but as of the epigraphy, as of the archaeology goes, as we know, and I'm emphasizing on the fact from yesterday, like from tracing or from emphasizing on the present day inscription, present day writing, we try to trace back to the late. So possibly his familiarity with the Devanagari script Bangla script and then the Siddhamatrika, and that finally led to read the 6th century CE Anantavarman's inscription. The next character is Christian Larsen. So, anyone, familiar with the coins, early Indian coins? Are you okay? So, sorry? Okay. So, this is a Greek coin, Indo-Greek coin, and which has a legend both in Brahmi and as well as in Greek. So, what is happening? Larsen gave a reading of this coin, and he was able to read the term agathoklia. Agathoklia, sir. Sorry? Kla? Kla, yes, sir. Which one you are saying? Reading of Brahmi, okay. Agatho? Okay, yeah. And the letter 1 is the Greek legend of it. So, he was a German Indologist, and this was the later he wrote to Princip, and Princip published it in one of his article in 1836 that that Larsen was able to read, almost a correct reading of the coin Agathoclea. But surprisingly, in all this article, in all this writing of Asiatic Society Bengal from 1832 onwards, I never found the term he's saying like someone has deciphered or someone has already identified the characters. It is always Mr. Wilkins, Dr. Wilkins, or Mr. Charles Wilkins, or for this Professor Larsen of Bonn of native legend on the coin of Agathoclea depicted in volume 3, this plate, that professor's letter, this moment received. The legend on the coin of Agathoclea is, in my opinion, in another character. I think we may recognize in, the Brahmi character what he has written. So, he identifies the fact that that Larsen read the coin correctly, but when it comes to the final reading, when it comes to the final identification of Brahmi characters or the Brahmi script, we hardly get to know about these people. It's only James Princip on 1837 read, yeah. Typeset, I don't think, yeah, I get it. I don't think it's a typeset because in most of the time it's the handwritten part that should be, is it? Yeah.
I think it was done, like for example, there are India plates which, you have this complex inscriptions inscribed. So this is essentially carved. So when they were doing the plate, I think they had specially prepared this text in a specially handcrafted and then put it there. Well, the English is basically done in the usual letterpress format and so on. But it's an interesting question that, exactly how they did, we don't know, this kinds of printing. But Princip himself mentions in some places that there was a particular plate which he engraved himself. So clearly they were doing all this.
Because for most of the plates, those are handwritten. Whatever we find, the eye copies or whatever, even for the coins, those are hand-drawn things.
No, he meant for the printing part.
No, I get
so the printing part, the plate has to be prepared. And the thing is that the English is basically done by actually putting these fonts. The fonts are already done, and so you just insert it in a line and do it. But for the hand printed thing, probably it's just one particular piece of lead which is cast, according. I don't know, to what extent lithography was done at the time that this was printed in 1836. But you may be right. I'm not a printing expert by any means. Possible is what I can say.
as for a few of the plates, we get the information lithographed by Princep, lithographed by Bert. I mean, the term is there. In particular, yeah, that's okay. So this is in 1837 again, and these are the writings. These are the titles by James Princep, and this was the, I mean, on the verge of finally deciphering the Ashokan inscription and identifying the character Devanam Piyadasi. And in this writings, he finally does a comparative analysis, as I have been telling from yesterday, like how he was looking at the inscription. This was the Dholi inscription, and Dholi, he mentions in the Udaygiri and Khandagiri Katak, the last article actually, there he talks about how the comparative part was going. And then finally he reads, he identifies the characters, Devanam Piyanam Piyapadasi, and we find another person, he was George Turner, and he confirmed from Sri Lanka that Devanam Piyanam Piyapadasi and Ashoka, they were the same person, and finally we get to know, we finally discover the ruler Ashoka, and all these inscriptions belong to him. So, going back to the diagram again. So, when I was saying 1837, Princep's final discovery, decipherment, won't it be an injustice if we just forget these people or their contribution? Because what is happening, if I am looking at the 4 reports of Cunningham again, he mentions there were the first generation of archaeologists, and some of them were, he just mentioned quote unquote, closet archaeologist. And by this term he means some of them would be in the office, and the others who were actually doing the field work, because by archaeology or archaeologist we of course mean the field work and the extensive work they do on the field every day, discovery and excavation and exploration, that's the word for them. So Princep, if we look at that, he hardly did such exercise. He was stationed in the office, and being the secretary of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, of course it was some privileged position, I would say, that he would have access from Nepal to Punjab everywhere, and people would send him the specimen again and again for reading. So, since I have been talking about the Brahmi network, if we look at this network, this is for steam engine. So, who discovered steam engine? Who comes in? James Watt. But again, if we look at the structure, he was not the only man or only person who finally contributed in it. So apart from him, there were people who simultaneously worked on the same thing. So from the previous slide and from this slide, the idea of the discovery, I mean, whenever a discovery happens, whenever something new has happened, we often try to claim, or we try to credit only one person for all of it. All the credit goes to particular one person. But behind that whole setup, there are this unsung voice who just keeps contributing on their own. So, yeah. No, I probably just mentioned about Madhav Rai and the other.
No, I didn't mean that. Okay. Popular literature aside, if you think about it, where would he have learned a lot of his local Indian script stuff from? he would have had to pick it up from the Pandits or whoever, right? So, are there any records of people of that type mentioned anywhere?
So, as I mentioned that he was in Banaras for quite a long time at the very beginning. So, he mentions about the Pandits from whom he learned the native language and who made, how he got interested in the later part. But the question you ask, at that time we know there were the munshis who were doing this job, who worked as a translator, who worked as a tutor for this administrative people. But funny part is, most of the time these people just probably they were too busy to mention them in their work.
So the point that you made there, just to expand on that, it is not actually, what you said is absolutely right. Prince Abba himself was not probably the only one who deciphered Brahmi, took a whole lot of activities around that. The two other points I want to make here, there is a lot of information to support that Brahmi wasn't exactly something forgotten or unreadable by some Indians. Two evidences for that. One is the form of characters take a long time, about 800 to 1000 years to be completely phased out. In inscriptions that I'm extremely familiar with, I see 5th century forms and 15th century inscriptions. It's not died down. It's there, suddenly somewhere you find a form of this type, which means people were aware, some people were continued to use the older forms.
By 5th and 15th, do you mean the 3rd century Brahmi or the later Brahmi?
I'm not talking Brahmi, I'm talking script in general. Specific examples I'm taking about are Kannada, which is what I know well. There's a 5th century form of a character which is in 15th century inscriptions. Okay. How's that possible? There's no continuity of usage of that. We don't have samples there. But suddenly you see
is
a form surfacing.
Is it for a particular one inscription or there are a lot of specimens?
There are many characters like this, not just one inscription in multiple inscriptions.
Okay.
So the fact that this form dies out fast is actually wrong. It stays for a long time, number one. And number two, inscriptions were recopied. Okay, whenever I'm talking about stone, and again I'm not talking Brahmi at all, the tradition of recopying inscriptions is quite common. When the stone breaks, flakes away, wears away, they would rewrite it. So they would be reading stuff which is 500, 800 years old, and then rewriting it in the new form. When they rewrite it, they're saying, I'm making a copy. So the date, etc. is all carried forward, which means people were proficient enough to read something which was written about 500, 600 years ago. So, I'm talking 10th century, 11th century. They were able to read.
Rewriting of inscription, are you talking about any particular area?
I'm only talking about non-Brahmi inscriptions. I'm talking about general. Okay, for me, inscriptions is everything. So where I'm coming from is the people of the place, not so much the script or the language. Okay, so if somebody sitting here, let's say in Taramani, could read an inscription written in Taramani 600, 800 years ago, they were proficient, they were competent enough to read the script of that time and recopy it.
By this, would you mean like everyone could read the inscription?
I mean anyone who was making the copy. So let's just kind of hear me the argument out. So the point I'm making is, reading ancient scripts was not forgotten. It was known. It had to be done because recopying manuscripts, recopying copper plates, recopying stone, recopying everything was a part of the natural ecosystem. Okay? And recopying typically happened 500, 800 years, 1000 years, whatever the material lasted for. Okay? So it is very hard to believe it took a princeps to decipher Brahmi. It is that he may have been the one who kind of screamed and made a noise of it and documented it. But I did think a lot of Indians were very competent in reading this. We don't know the full story yet.
But when it comes to Brahmi, from 3rd century BC to the later period, whatever I was showing yesterday, what we see usually a chronological evolution. if the script remains static, then why do we see such and such
Say that again.
region?
I have not said the script remains static.
Okay.
What I am saying is the script remains in some form, in a few characters, for a long time. There are multiple forms of a character. Okay?
That's why
So-
I was asked, that's the process they also followed, right? They did a comparative analysis, right?
No. So listen to me again. Let me repeat this. Let's say there's a character Ka written in, say, 0 AD. That form of Ka will surface in a 10th century writing as well, in addition to other forms of Ka. Is this okay? So far you're following me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The question is, the point is that the Princip alone is, was the person who deciphered this Brahmi seems a little far-fetched from the natural point. It's not a question, it's a point.
I mean, just to answer your point, since you are saying like the script, the character would remain same. This is how it usually goes. If you mean the character remains in the inscription.
Now what I'm saying is, in addition to the last form, the first form is also filed simultaneously in the later times.
Yeah, because the character would be same. Because I probably mentioned yesterday, when the material gets changed, when the scribe gets changed, of course there will be a change in the handwriting.
Over time as well.
Of course, because there were foreign and external influence, right?
Right. So therefore, if it spans so long, it is quite possible that other people were able to identify characters, not just Princip himself. That's all the point is.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyway, the point of showing this particularly that he was probably not the only person who was particularly working on this, and when I look at a certain discovery, certain decipherment or something new, so we often try to credit particular one person. So there is always a backdrop, and if we look at any scientific discovery, what would happen? The idea what we usually get from there, like apart from that single node, the person who is credited with the final achievement, there would be other people, there would be other supporting hands who will be continuously providing the resources, and finally that thing takes place. And the other thing, at the very beginning of my talk, I started talking about the context. The right time and the right context becomes even more important and interesting, why that particular moment had hit or that particular moment had sparked to the final decipherment or final discovery of a new thing. So by this, I would like to conclude, like whenever we talk about the decipherment or whenever we try to credit Princip as the one who deciphered Brahmi, maybe it's the time we just correct the sentence, or we can just modify the sentence by saying like he read the 3rd century BC Brahmi or he read the Ashokan Brahmi, because as I shown you, there were other people and Wilkins did his job already earlier than Princip. So that's it. Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, please.
6th century BC to
4th
4th century BC.
yeah.
His book is Ashtadhyayi. which inscription, which script has been used by him?
Uh, exactly. So here there is a confusion, and Harry Falk and Oscar von Hindenburg, they have some recent writings on that. First of all, dating Panini itself is a bit confusing thing, right? It's a I mean, whether he belonged to 4th century BC or not. And if we actually look at the location of Panini, the area, that is the northwestern area, that's the Gandhar. So in that area, if I look back again in 3rd century BC, what Ashoka did, he didn't issue a Brahmi inscription. He did a Kharoshti inscription, and that's the Shabaskari and Manchera. So by the term lipi, if Panini exactly meant Brahmi cannot be possible, but we can't omit the fact that Kharoshti, since Kharoshti was already there, and he could have actually pointed to Kharoshti, that can be possible. So because in northwest, Kharoshti was quite evident there, and even in the later period when we look at the bilingual coins, we see the Greek as well as the Kharoshti on the both this side. So probably he, by that he also could have meant the Kharoshti lipi. Yeah.
And all, we are getting like 5th century, 6th century BC Tamil Brahmi potsherds. So will this push back the dating of Brahmi, which could be possible that Ashokan Brahmi might have emerged from or developed from this early Tamil Brahmi inscriptions?
If you remember from Professor Sina's talk, he was mentioning the Hangul and the connection between the Brahmi inscription. Like
yes.
Hangul was particularly designed for the, designed for the by the king for particularly to give order and all. And even if we look at the Brahmi's thing, Brahmi, how the inscription or the how writing is done, it's even for actually for Ashoka's purpose, it was to give orders or give proclamation of his Dhamma and all, right? So there is a connectivity with that, like it was purposely designed designed script. But when you are saying the recent excavation and recent findings of Brahmi, there has to be have that evident, that much of quantifying data, right? You know this better than me, right? So the amount
thing is like, apart from Kodumanal and Kiladi, they are getting good number of potsherds from the small sites. Like recently there were Mangur, almost 24-25 sites as of now. They are getting potsherds which inscribed potsherds. Also, apart from that, we are getting the names, and abroad also, even in Oman, Korori, we are having Tamil Brahmi inscription which mention Nandai Kiran. So that basically means group name of some person which you can find in Sangam text as well.
So when I'm looking at Ashoka's inscription, particularly when he is taking all the effort, even in the southern part of India, he is inscribing those inscription and all. So by that time, I have to understand, or I have to accept the fact, like at least, if not all, at least some people were familiar or aware of the script, if not all, because I can't say everyone was aware.
Because these archaeologists like Kerajan and all, they are saying during the Sangam period, this could be possible of the widespread literacy rate in early historic Tamilagam, because this has been found from almost 25 sites, not only the port sites and hinterland sites, but also from the rural sites, like small sites which is only having this indigenous ceramics. Because when we talk about this Kodumanal, Keeladi and all, we are getting non-Indian ceramics. But there are some sites from we are getting only Indian ceramics. From these sites, we are getting potsherds as well, like inscribed potsherds.
So isn't it like after this time we see the, after Ashoka's 3rd century BC thing, if we
before the Ashokan.
No, I'm saying this like if we go forward, we will finally see the division between the northern and southern. It's like technically.
You mean?
The characteristic changes in the scripts, right? There.
Not that much, but yeah, kind of.
The characteristic changes were there, right?
Yeah.
So when you were talking about this Tamil Brahmi, the potsherds and all, so they are corresponded to this characters or with the Ashokan scripts?
it is more connected with Tamil Brahmi only, not with Ashokan Brahmi, because earlier the first discovery was rock shelter inscription, rock inscriptions, which dated from 2nd century or 3rd century BC onwards. These inscribed potsherds, they are having more connection with this rock inscription from Tamil Brahmi only.
Okay.
Yeah.
So dating, maybe that's a debatable issue
Yeah, because
now.
they did this dating and based on this AMS, radiocarbon dating, based on that only they have dated like 5th century, 6th century BC for this Tamil Brahmi,
Earlier
like
period.
yeah, earliest Tamil Brahmi. And also from Sri Lanka also they have found like 4th century or 5th century. Yeah, Anuradhapura, yeah.
But
Yeah, so actually we have looked through this thing. We don't see any compelling evidence that it's actually earlier than Ashokan period. There is no published evidence. I know there's a lot of
Anuradhapura
thing going
thing-
on in the media,
Yeah.
but there is nothing concrete to prove that it's actually predating the Ashokan period.
Yeah, because what I was saying last month, I mean in January there was some conference in IIT Madras.
No, you can claim anything.
Yeah,
No,
but
I'm talking
no,
about you. The archaeologist can
yes.
claim anything, but eventually the published paper has to have the concrete evidence
Yeah.
that it is prior to Ashokan period. And the Sri Lankan claim in particular has no concrete evidence whatsoever that it's
Okay.
prior to Ashokan period.
But this is based on AMS dating and some other.
We couldn't at least find any concrete evidence. I mean, we,
at
we,
least
we
for
looked through the literature.
At least for the Sri Lankan thing, because I used to tell him about the Sri Lankan thing, and Solomon also mentioned this thing, like for the year. But when we look at the literature, there's, I mean, there are. But the recent study, whatever you are saying, maybe we can look through that.
Yeah, let's see what further excavation results will come out.
So, just one point. I won't deliberate on this. I think a lot of the stuff that we are saying today is based on information which is almost 100 years old. Since then, a lot of work hasn't happened. And just to substantiate what I'm saying, personally, I work in 3 districts around Bangalore. We have discovered about 300 new inscriptions which have not been documented. Much of what we think of is already all established is going to change because now we are going to go discover a lot more. So it's a point in time theory that we are talking here. So whatever he is saying, whatever else he is saying, why haven't we found Brahmi inscriptions? We haven't looked enough. It's not that we haven't found, they aren't there. So, there are enough examples in TN today and everywhere else. So if somebody can just go to a village today, can go to a neighboring village and find an inscription, it's telling you something that the survey isn't being done well enough yet. So whatever theories we give, it originated here, it originated there, it didn't originate here, I think they need to wait and say, look, based on what we know today, this is how it seems. Things can dramatically change in the future because we haven't done enough survey yet. That's all.
People like us, so we study based on the published things because we are not archaeologists. Even I do remember recently we visited. There was a conference in IIT. So there because I'm mainly involved in those things. So there we are struggling with data. So I talked with many archaeologists. That's okay. They said, okay, we have this data, that data. I said, okay, why don't you publish? They gave different reason. The point is, yeah. So the point is, whatever she is showing is based on published data. So yeah, so maybe tomorrow these results will come up. Obviously, teaching will be changes.
Sir, your point is very well taken. So it is, of course, true that if one wants to explore how Brahmi arose, we have to consider the latest data. We don't doubt that. But Nandini's talk is not about how Tamil arose. It's about the history.
It's not about arguing with her at all. I'm just
Yeah.
adding in a few more points.
Sure. But the main point she's trying to make is about the historiography, and there I think the point she's making completely agrees with the point that you are making.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it's just to make that point that
Yeah.
look, we are at that turning point in research and history
Absolutely,
today,
yeah.
things are extremely dynamic. That's about it.
Absolutely. The point very well taken. In fact, what her research shows is that that's just the tip of the iceberg, what we know.
It's
There's a
wonderful
lot
to
of
hear
things
her
going-
say that, there's an ecosystem around Princep.
Right.
All I'm saying is that's even beyond the ecosystem, there's much more
Yeah.
that we don't know yet.
In fact, just to support your point, we are actually trying to find out more about Madhava Rao, this librarian of the Sanskrit College in Varanasi, who Princep acknowledges as having read some of this Brahmi inscription and have therefore provided a key contribution, but about whom we know nothing. So we're in the process of trying to contact people at BHU to try to see if anything can be traced about is anything known about Madhava Rao and about how he got around to reading this inscription. How did he read those inscriptions? Because nothing, we cannot find anything about him.
To me, it seems so far-fetched that Princep alone discovered or deciphered Brahmi. It seems like unnatural.
Absolutely. We completely agree with you there. Yeah. All right. So,
I'd like to say something, a few points. Since I work with inscriptions and Nandini already knows about it, when we are seeing Brahmi script from 3rd century BC or later on, we need to also simultaneously remind ourselves that Prakrit and Pali is the common language, is the language that people are speaking on a daily basis. And simultaneously, the works are being produced in, the works where Prakrit and Pali is being, they had influence on this Brahmi script. And also who came first, whether Ashokan or Tamil, it's ongoing debate. And there was obviously some form of quote-unquote proto, I don't like to use the word proto, but proto-Brahmi was already there, so where, that sort of alphabets were already circulating and Ashoka picked it up. And already it was not just Ashoka, after Ashoka even, from 1st century BCE to 3rd century CE in whole of Deccan, this sort of continuity of that same Brahmi script can be found, and along with regional variations. So Deccani variations can be found in the continuation of the Ashokan Brahmi in and around this Deccan region. So context is extremely important while reading inscriptions and also the variations. And I think Nandini wanted to actually put it out that, the crux of her whole presentation is that James Princep is not the only one to decipher inscriptions, and many contacts, many networks are there, and she tried to prove that only throughout her presentation. Thank you.
Hi Nandini, I have a question regarding those graphs that you showed. The network, the knowledge network. So I was expecting that there will be directed edges, as in this guy borrowed knowledge from this guy who did it way before, but all the networks were undirected. So why how are the edges made?
You mean the James Watt network, or you mean the Brahmi network?
James Watt, I saw that it's undirected.
But you see those nodes are arranged in time. So
Oh, I
basically
see.
you have to
Okay.
read the
Timeline.
links are going from top to bottom.
Same with the Brahmi inscription as
Same
well.
with the Brahmi.
1780 to
okay.
1840.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how.
And actually there are arrowheads. It's just that the picture is, the arrowheads are so small you
Oh,
can't
okay.
see them.
It's
All
pixel.
right.
In the Brahmi picture.
Brahmi picture.
Yes, they are directed, of course.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
so if there are no other questions, let's thank the speaker once more. And we are right on time for the last talk of today, which is going to be given by Dr. Subramanian. And now we are kind of switching gears to Indus, which is in some sense the main focus of our lab. And Dr. Subramanian is the authority on the various databases on the Indus symbols, on the Indus sequences. So, databases is where we start from. If you want to decipher anything, first we have to have as comprehensive a database as possible. And ever since the discovery of the civilization, or the report of the discovery of the civilization just 100 years back, 1924, people have actually tried to build a comprehensive database of this inscription. So the first, I think, was done by Hunter, if I'm correct. Yeah,
Yes.
which Subbu is going to briefly describe. But the pursuit for a more comprehensive database continues as more and more inscriptions continue to be found, and presumably we'll never quite have a completely perfect database. Just what is the best up till the date. All right. So Subbu will give us a nice overview of all these kinds of databases and concordances that have come up so far on IndusScript and its research. So, Dr. Subramanian.
Thanks, Sitabra. Good evening, everyone. Looking at what Nandini presented, I see this 100-year cycle. So now that we are 100 years from the date of discovery, or at least the announcement of the discovery of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, I'm hopeful something will soon happen in terms of deciphering the IndusScript. Okay. I'm quickly going to go over the IndusScript, concordances and their role in the IndusScript analysis and where the current research lies. I'm sure you would have seen this in other presentations, this broad map of where all the Indus sites reside. They are mostly in what is called Sindh in current day Pakistan, the West Punjab, and Baluchistan. That's basically where most of them lie. The Indus civilization had its beginnings from 7000 BC onwards. But what we really call as Indus civilization happened during the mature Harappan phase, which is 2500 to 1900 BCE. The civilization collapsed soon after 1900 BCE, and there was a bit of a, what's called post-urban Harappan phase, or later Harappan phase, that lasted for about 700, 800 years, depending on where you are looking at. Again, I'm focusing on the inscribed objects. In places like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, a lot of artifacts were found. The ones of most interest are the seals and seal impressions. There were also tablets, terracotta tablets, and pottery with seal impressions, and most importantly, copper tablets and copper tools. The sad thing with these copper tools is they have degraded beyond description because you cannot see what is on them. So for the most part, these copper objects, you have to rely on what has been documented so far. The IndusScript is generally written from right to left. There are some exceptions where you see them being written from left to right, and also in a boustrophedon form. Why is IndusScript not deciphered yet, although it has been more than 100 years since we started to talk about them? Bilingual scripts are missing. For example, in case of Egyptian hieroglyphs, you had Rosetta Stone. And in IndusScript, we have very short texts. The average text is about 5 characters, 5 signs or less in length. And the number of texts available so far is relatively few, about 4,000. And we don't know for sure what the underlying language is. And this is Rosetta Stone with hieroglyphic, Demotic, and the ancient Greek, all describing the same. So this was used by Campbellian to among others, to decipher the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Similar thing happened with Akkadian, Elamite, and Old Persian on Mount Behishtan inscription. So it was easy to decipher the Sumerian script. Okay. Quick recap on Indus Valley civilization's discovery. In the mid 1800s, the Great Game was on. Funny how things haven't changed since. It's the same characters, Afghanistan, Russia, Great Britain, all in the mix. One George Mason, who is widely believed to be an army deserter by some and an American spy, who was scouting around this area, who happened to visit Harappa and document what he found. Subsequently, Punjab was annexed and the British rule of India started. Under ASI, there was a lot of research going on into identifying all the Buddhist monuments in the western Punjab and what is now called Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Also, they were interested in knowing where all Alexander the Great went when he was in India. When John Marshall started heading Archaeological Survey of India, two people under him, Rakaldas Banerjee and Dayaram Sahani, headed efforts in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. And when their findings were brought to John Marshall's attention, he found them to be very similar, and that is when he decided to announce a great civilization. He called it Indus Valley Civilization, and this is how it was announced nearly 100 years back in September 1924. John Marshall published his findings in a monumental publication called Mohenjo-daro and Indus Civilization in 1931. This book contained a sign manual produced by Gadd and Smith. Gadd was with the British Museum and Smith was with the Babylonian project looking into artifacts from Iraq. So again, going back to this book, this contained Langdon's hypothesis connecting Indus script to Brahmi. So the link to Brahmi started earnestly from this point. Okay, this is how Gadd and Smith's sign manual look. This is the very first ever manual of an Indus script. It contained a mix of unique signs and sign variants. Again, this was handwritten. No. Now, quickly, what is a corpus and what is a concordance? A corpus is a collection of data. For example, Shakespeare's entire work or his tragedies, we can call it a corpus. In the context of Indus script, corpus typically contains text from inscribed objects of various kinds, and they are organized in a consistent way. This becomes critical because objects form multiple sites. In case of tablets, you have objects written all over the site. So how do we read it in a consistent form and document it becomes a critical question. Concordance as a biblical root, it's an alphabetical index of principal works with reference to the passages in which that particular word occurs. In case of Indus script, concordance has a different meaning. So it is created for a particular sign to indicate in what text and in which position of a text that particular sign occurs. So in order to create a proper concordance, you need to have a defined sign list, including sign variants, rules for what to be included and excluded, how to handle when multi-side objects occur, and what is the best way to present the text, and including other information such as field symbols and duplicate texts. This has been a vexing problem, especially handling the duplicate texts. Okay. Hunter was involved in the initial excavation of Mohenjo-daro, and he used his data collection for his doctoral thesis. He published this collection as a book in 1934. This is based on the information he collected only from Mohenjo-daro. This list had 234 distinct signs, and he based it on the Gaddon-Smith sign list. There were about 750 objects he found in Mohenjo-daro. He also later grouped Harappa data in this. The good thing about Hunter was that he provided the source, such as the museum in which the object was located, and he provided drawings of all the inscribed objects. There was no photographic documentation. He did a lot of comparative studies, but his work was limited by the number of objects he had. So this is how the table structure of Hunter's concordance looked. On the right, extreme right column, you have the unique sign that he was tracking, and the letter R represents that particular sign. It's kind of confusing, but that is how he represented. R is, I guess, stood for the reference. The row 247, for example, has two lines and an R followed by another colon kind of sign. This. Hunter thinks only the R, that is the reference sign, is the proper sign, but this colon followed by fish sign, followed by colon itself is a different sign, as it turns out.
So which sign he decides to anchor it on, that's entirely based on?
That's, yeah, Hunter, but he used the Gaddon-Smith as the initial reference point. But this is his reference sign, and all the R's are follows that. Hunter also did similar looking signs into groups, which is again a very first thing. Some of them are different signs, but some of them can be sign variants. This is a different sign, this is a different sign, but he grouped them all together. So, Hunter was the first to analyze signs individually and identify sign variants. He studied the structure and formation of index signs and how compounding of signs occur. He was the first one to formally tabulate text by reference sign we saw earlier, like that. So that the text can be aligned and presented. He did some statistical analysis and by which he established the direction of writing, primarily as from right to left. He speculated on the possible grammatical and textual meaning of signs. He was the first one to formally do segmentation of text. He also did contextual analysis. For example, he went through certain Indus seals found in the Middle East and found the text combination occurring in them to be very different from what he found in Mohenjo-daro. So he was of the impression that they were encoding a different form of text there. Again, finally he did comparative linguistic studies between Indus script, Sumerian, Egyptian, and Sanskrit. In the 60s, saw Russians getting into the fray, and computer-aided analysis of Indus script became fashionable. Along with Soviets, I said Russians, and then it was Soviet. So, along with Soviet.
So there was a big gap between Hunter and the 1960s.
Yes, and very few people took Hunter's work seriously. No further work was done. Even, yes, it is surprising, and even here, nobody used Hunter's data, the book. It was republished by someone in Delhi, I think. Yeah. So, other than that, I was trying to locate his PhD thesis, but it became such a hard thing to do. It was not easily available, not freely available anyway. So.
No, I'm just surprised that nobody worked on, like creating a database from, let's say, 1930s.
30s, 60s, no.
You have no guesses as to why this lack of interest.
No, I'm kind of mystified myself as to why they didn't do that. But then, see, during this period, I mean, there was less archaeological activity in India too. Other than Lothal, I think there was no significant findings during this period in the 50s and 60s. So, I don't know. Maybe focus was different those days. World War, partition, all those good stuff. But even in the 50s, I mean, up to 60s, until the mid 60s when the Soviets started to publish, and in the 66 is when Mahadevan published his first comparison of Indus script and Dravidian links. Only after that there was a lot of interest that picked up here. Very little is known about the Soviet analysis. They did not publish the kind of tools they used, kind of corpus they created, etc. But Soviets seem to have concluded that the structure of the Indian script is closest to the Dravidian language. The Finnish team announced in 1969 that they have successfully deciphered the Indus script. But it was a premature announcement, and there was a lot of criticism on that, so they quickly withdrew that. Mahadevan. After Hunter's work, Mahadevan's work was the most significant. I said late 60s. Actually, his paper was published in 1970 by drawing attention to the parallels between Dravidian languages and the Indus script. He initially created a photographic card catalog to aid his research effort. Anecdotally, he's probably the only person who seems to have physically looked at every object that was available in ASI Museum and also in Delhi Museum. So no one else that I know of has seen that. He says he couldn't visit Pakistan, because he was an IAS officer at that time, so they wouldn't let him there. Otherwise, he would have jolly well walked into Lahore or wherever else these objects were kept. So he created a photographic card catalog, and he worked with the College of Engineering, Guindy, to create his first corpus in 1971, and it was refined later with the help of TIFR. And finally, the new and improved version of his complete concordance was published in 1977. It has not been updated since. So, to publish this concordance, he created his own typeset of Indus signs. I'll show you. Okay, before that, there are about 250 signs in Hunter's concordance, and now they have in Mahadevan's work. There were 419, although inexplicably only 417 were used in his analysis. Now there are 2,900 or so objects obtained from 26 different sites. Mahadevan presented his corpus separately and also his concordance. So, two different sections in his book. He performed extensive textual and statistical analysis, and the summary data was also presented in multiple tables within that book. It's a tome about this thick. So, I believe it is still available in ASI if you know the right person to contact. So, okay. On your left, you see the sign list of Mahadevan. He had an order of presenting this, humans first and animals and that kind of a thing, lion objects next and so forth. I mean, I remember him saying that he followed a particular standard. I don't recall which standard he was using to represent signs in a particular sequence. Anthropomorphic figures first, and then animals, and next, and then line objects and so forth. On your right, you will see the sign variants that he had noted. So, these three he had categorized as sign number 1. That's how it goes. So, again, on the left side, you see the corpus created by Mahadevan. Oh, sorry. This is an indication of unclear sign. So, he was not able to read it properly, or it was damaged or destroyed, that section of the text. So, this is the Mohenjo-daro, a sample of Mohenjo-daro text presented in a corpus form, and this is his concordance. For example, like Hunter, he chose a reference sign. So, he simply made R as the column, and he aligned everything along that. So, things shifted to the left or the right, so that all texts are aligned according to that particular reference sign. So, okay, some of the highlights of Mahadevan's concordance. The first comprehensive corpus and concordance with analytical tables. Thorough research went into its preparation. Easy availability and accessibility at that time. It was institutionalized. The whole thing was owned by ASI, which still owns it. Fortunately for him, his work spawned several research papers, several from Mahadevan himself and from others. Professor Gift Ceremony of is a statistical professor. He did a lot of Madras Christian College. He has done a lot of statistical analysis based on Mahadevan's concordance. Recently, Roja Muttaya Library, where he has gifted many of his works, has created a web-enabled interface so that anyone can access the Mahadevan database. So that is what it is. Parpola. Parpola is a close associate. He came to India to do research on, I think, religion of all things. But he got interested in Indus script, and he worked with another Finnish gentleman, Seppo Koskenemi, and they created what's called a pairs concordance. That is, instead of individual signs, they took pairs of signs and started to create a concordance work. Even they lost interest in such analysis, so they dropped it. They created a corpus and concordance between 79 and 82, and it has not been updated since. But what made Parpola's contribution great was his creation of CISI. That is, it says 3 volume, now it has been, 5 volume. Corpus of Indus scripts and inscription. The first one was from India, the second one from Pakistan, third one mostly from the HARP project, which was conducted in the late 90s. HARP is Harappa Archaeological Research Project. And the fourth and fifth are from nearby archaeological sites such as Shahri Shokta in Iran, eastern Iran, Mehergarh, Navsharao, and so forth. And now there is a latest volume on Indo-Iranian borderlands. This is how they look. I'm most familiar with the top 3, so I haven't seen the last 2. So, okay, this is Parpola's pair concordance and sign list. See, unlike this is a sign list, and he used the pairs here. If you look at it, he will see 2 signs: the double quote and the fish sign here. He used that as an analysis. So this did not last long. Okay, this is his concordance sign list. It looks very similar to Mahadevan's, although unlike Mahadevan, he incorporated the sign variants within the sign list itself. So this is Parpola's 7982 concordance. Again, this is the reference sign, and he tried to align all the reference sign down. Where you see a discrepancy, this is a multi-line text, for example. So otherwise the text aligned properly. This is Parpola's singular contribution to Indus script research. With the aid of UNESCO, he brought some photographers from Finland and started with the help of and blessing of ASI in India and Pakistan's archaeological department. He started to photograph all Indus objects. So the CISI is the outcome of all those efforts. The best thing is, as I pointed out earlier, the copper objects are deteriorating really fast. So if you go and take a look at them, probably you will see copper powder there, that kind of a situation. So this is the best evidence of what we have unearthed so far. So in that sense, He has made a phenomenal contribution. I know he worked closely with Mahadevan because for some of the objects, ASI did not have the proper reference, so he used Mahadevan's card catalog to properly link them. So, okay, just pointed out. This is the obverse, this is the reverse. That is, if the obverse has engraved signs, he made a picture of them. So if you put it on stamp it on a clay soil, this is the impression you'll get. So original, you will read from right to left. No, sorry, original you will read from left to right. This is the actual thing you will read from right to left. Sorry. Parpola was and still one of the early pioneers of use of computers. His early concordance was comprehensive but not widely published. But strange thing is, at least one researcher used his concordance to prove that InterScript was written from left to right. So, and it was Dravidian. So, people have, although it was not widely published, people have used this. His photographic corpora is his singular contribution to the field of InterScript research. Parpola has performed his own analysis, and he has written several papers, and more importantly, he has published a book in which he goes extensively into the InterScript analysis. Especially, I like his grid analysis. I don't think many people have followed on that. Grid analysis and pattern analysis. To some extent, Brian Wells has done, we will come to Brian Wells in a moment, has done pattern analysis, but not much has been done on grid analysis. I think that is an area we should probably focus on. Brian Wells is the latest, the last one I'm going to talk about today. He got interested in InterScript during his master's and did his master's thesis on InterScript. He proceeded to do his PhD dissertation also on InterScript. So out of all this came an expanded sign list and a more elaborate classification of objects. For example, Mahadevan would classify something as just seal, whereas Brian will go ahead and describe 10 different types of seals that he found. Very nice, but analyzing that many classification poses its own challenges anyway. So Wells also included heart data in his database. He is being helped by another researcher from Germany. His name is Andreas Fulz. Andreas now manages the web-enabled database of Brian Wells. They have added several dynamic analysis features, and they display the form in tabular form and not in a concordance form. This is the sign list of Brian Wells. He has taken a different view. Mahadevan and Parpola started with human anthropomorphic signs. Brian starts with the numeric signs and so forth. So he has about 677 signs. There is a big difference between Mahadevan, Parpola on the one hand and Brian Wells. Mirror images, for example, Brian treats them as separate signs, so, which is an area of contention. So this is how the Brian Wells corpus looks. If you haven't seen it, you should go and look at it. It's very nice. It's very friendly. So I think access is available to anyone who asks for it. So, okay. So Wells corpus is the most comprehensive IndeScript corpus that is available. It's web-enabled and freely available to all scholars. So it's the first corpus to be created primarily from photographic images of objects rather than directly from the objects themselves. This is where he differs from Mahadevan and Parpola. He's an archaeologist and he has done some digging, but he has never seen many of the Indus objects, inscribed objects anyway.
Just anecdotally, he once told me that many of the seals for which your photographs, for the Pakistan volume of CISI, some of the seals for which your photographs, when you went to the museums, they claimed that the seals are no longer there, or the seals were never there.
Pakistan has one of the most stringent laws against theft of the archaeological artifacts. But I believe it's very easy to take objects away.
Yeah, I mean, one wonders whether the same thing would be true in Indian museums also.
We don't know.
Yeah.
No one has done an audit. So this photographic corpus is the best hope we have. See, he has a different approach towards handling signs and sign variants. People may or may not agree with it, but at least it provides a variety from which you can choose. He has done extensive, he and others. Now many people are collaborating with Brian and Andreas Fulls, so there is more research work going on. In that sense, it's contributing heavily to the IndeScript analysis. But it needs to be institutionalized. It's presently managed by an individual. That in the long run is not a good thing. So how to institutionalize will be the question they have to answer. This is a long table, but let me summarize it this way. The concordances and corpora provided a comprehensive repository of Indus objects and a way of organizing them through a standard sign list and sign variant list. They all gave a statistical analysis of the data and made them available to scholars. This provided the stage for further research. It has also given us a significant understanding of how the IndeScript works, how the regional variations occur, and what could be the possible language underlying the IndeScript. More importantly, all this has given us potential areas for future research and potential languages or that we should be looking at for decipherment. Contextual analysis is an area that needs to be looked at as a future research area. And there is evidence that even the current IndeScript, when you look at the frequency of occurrence of text, you see a certain pattern in Harappa that you don't see in Mohenjo-daro. So there is geographical variation. So, and one thing that has not been looked into very carefully is stratigraphy. That is, at what depth were things found. I don't know if I have it. I will try to show it to you. After the initial excavation, an American archaeologist did further excavations in Mohenjo-daro. His name was Mackay. Mackay did the most thorough archaeological dig at Mohenjo-daro. Before him, the mode of operation was archaeology by wheelbarrow. So they come, fill the wheelbarrow, send it through a sieve, and whatever surfaced will get identified as an object and saved. Whereas Mackay was the first one to go layer by layer, identify at what layer, in what position it was found, so that you know the context in which a particular inside object occurred. You also know, along with this object, if something else occurred, a mud pot, pottery, or another tool occurred. Even now, you can go to his report and find out exactly what happened, what room it occurred, and at what depth, and from the door, how far was it, and so forth. That kind of details are not available even in Lothal report. It simply says it occurred here, that kind of a thing. So stratigraphy is very important. I think these days it's being taken into consideration seriously, but it was not so in the past. Multidisciplinary research, I think, I know Sitabra is one person who is doing that kind of a thing. So a lot of that is happening. More textual analysis and creation of more analytical tools is the future area of research. It has been 100 years since the discovery of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa was announced, but we are nowhere close to determining the underlying script of Indus Valley civilization. I know someone among you is going to be the discoverer of that script. So definitely not me, the next generation which needs to take the research forward. So in that, the lack of new talent to continue the research work is something we should be concerned about. Making the corpus and concordance up to date and make them available to everyone so that research can be conducted based on that, by which I mean institutionalizing the process. This is again going back to what Sitabra said, accessibility to original artifacts. Many of them are lost due to theft and deterioration, specifically in case of copper objects. 3D rendering of objects. I think now this is, a lot of that is being talked about. Looking at Perpola's photographs is one thing, but seeing it in a three-dimensional form will give more perspective to the researcher. Lack of physical access is a definite problem because from ASI's point of view, they don't want the objects to be destroyed. So we need to create a way of doing both. In this regard, the effort done by Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, CDLI, is worthwhile emulating. What they have done is, for each object, they have given the 3D images. They have given what is written, this is the cuneiform script, and also the notes of the various people who did the research. It's a comprehensive rendering of a simple object. Such a thing is really needed for all Indus objects. Currently, there is a lot of excavation going on in the what's called Gaggar Hakra river basin. Ancient DNA-based research is also in full swing. This is mostly to identify the genealogy of the people who inhabited the land. And finally, computational linguistics, which is a big thing that's going on. That's it for me. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a comment on this one, that during the partition, Pakistan claimed half of the objects, Indus Valley objects, which are deposited in Delhi. Then I heard that all these are kept somewhere in a warehouse in Lahore for a long time, and we don't know what happened to them. There are many seals and many objects, artifacts, and so on.
In schools, when in high school, when you hear about, first read about Indus Valley civilization, I'm sure wherever you went to school, you would have seen a picture of a gold ornament that was discovered in Mohenjo-daro. Okay. In 1998, there was an exhibition in Asia Society, New York, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Pakistan's independence, where Pakistan had displayed all the objects they had acquired post-partition. That chain was half cut. This is how we partitioned. Okay. Apparently, they were fighting tooth and nail over each object, especially anything of precious value. I don't know about the seals. Some seals went to Pakistan. They were all listed in that green book. And that orange book of Parpola contains all the objects that were left with India. So the partition was painful even from this perspective.
No, but the more interesting point is that Subbu, even after Parpola did the photograph, after that some items have gotten missing.
Missing, yeah.
That is the interesting point.
Yeah, even Parpola mentions that. He went back to see the objects and they were not there.
Sir, sorry, apologies, I made a mistake. What year were these photographs taken?
Parpola.
Approximately.
Parpolas. The first book was published in 1987, that the India version, and the Pakistan was 92.
And since then we have had no other photographs.
No, there is a third book, which is the HARP project, Harappa Archaeological Research Project. See, Parpola brought his own photographers, and both in India and Pakistan, the archaeological department insisted on using their own photographers. So Parpola said, I will hire them, but I will use my photographer to take the photographs. A lot of politics went on. So although the project started somewhat early, 85 or so, it took them a long time to wade through all these politics to get the photographs. I think ASI India has the one copy of the original negatives, and Parpola has the other copy.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again.
There are no other questions. Let's thank Dr. Subramanian once more. And so we end for today, and tomorrow we again begin at 10, and we'll be going full into Indus mode with Nisha